The A-List Podcast is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This is the A-List Podcast. Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn. I'm Kwani Lunis. And the NBA season is finally over officially. But let's start. Of course, this is still a Celtics-centric podcast. We're going to start with the Celtics. They added Charles Lee to their coaching staff. He will be the new associate head coach of the Boston Celtics. He's coming from Milwaukee with that experience as well. He also interviewed for other head coaching vacancies over the offseason, but it sounds like he's going to land in Boston. Let's just start from the beginning. What do you two make of that coaching hire for the Boston Celtics?
Go Sherrod.
Good hire. I mean, go ahead, Gary.
Oh, okay. I think it's a solid hire. He's an aspiring head coach. He brings some fresh ideas coming from an arch rival of the Celtics. I think he will bring a very good and positive perspective, just like Sam Cassell will. I think it's the proper move. You've got to bolster the coaching staff, and I think that this is an example that, unfortunately last year, the coaching staff just wasn't up to par. You had guys who weren't experienced. You had guys who were first time in a certain position. You didn't really have NBA veteran player, former player on there. You didn't have a guy that they could really look up to, the players could look up to or listen to or completely know that they've been where those guys have been. So I think the hiring of Cassell fills that role. And then Charles Lee's a guy who commands respect around the league, solid assistant. I said, like, on the verge. This should be his last assisting head coaching job. His next job will likely be as a head coach somewhere. It could be the Celtics. Who knows? But I'm not throwing it out there. I'm just saying, who knows? But
respectfully, Gary's just throwing it out.
No shade. No shade,
respectfully. But he lived in. he interviewed for the Toronto job. He didn't get it. The Memphis assistant got it. So he's close. So I think this will be a good stepping stone. Obviously, it wasn't, Milwaukee fired Mike Budenholzer, so he wasn't going to go back to Milwaukee. But this is a new good opportunity for him to be the lead assistant, give Joe some really good, strong point of views and feedback, and hopefully strengthen this coaching staff to the point where it's not a weakness, it's a strength.
Yeah, it just felt that, as we kind of look back at last season, there really was this almost musical chairs-like feel about this coaching staff where you had people going around in different roles that they weren't accustomed to, that they didn't really have a ton of experience at, and hoping that once the music stopped, everyone will have a seat and you can just move on and win a lot of games and win a championship. And it didn't happen. I like the Charles Lee addition because he brings not only in terms of experience, but I think he brings a certain defensive mindset that I think they needed to add to this coaching staff. I think he also brings a guy that is young enough to relate to them, but has been through enough to where there's going to be a certain level of respect. Jason Tatum knows all too well what that Milwaukee defense can do and how challenging it can be for you. Same thing with Jaylen Brown. So he's going to come in with, I think, a different kind of respect that they need in that lead, associate head coach role. And the other thing, too, and Gary, you kind of alluded to it, but I'm going to just take it a little step further. He's going to make Joe Mazzulla better because Joe Mazzulla knows that if he doesn't get better, guess what? They kind of got somebody who is very similar to you in terms of experience, in terms of all those things that you want to check off the box, who's right next to you. So if you don't get better, they got somebody who can take your spot. I think that's going to be a good thing for Joe Mazzulla and Celtics. I think it's going to make them better. It's going to make Joe a better coach. And it's going to make this team, I think, get one step closer to the ultimate goal, which is to win a championship.
What do you think are the skill sets that he brings to the table for this team, other than the obvious ones that you mentioned?
Well, the defense, I think, is one. And not only in terms of just team-like defense, but making guys better defenders individually. You look at Chris Middleton, and you look at where he was maybe 4 or 5 years ago to where he's at now defensively, completely different player. He was a walking turnstile years ago. Now, not nearly as frankly, defensive deficient as he was before. And I think that's the thing that I think Charles Lee is going to bring to the table. He's going to make individuals better. And that's frankly, I think, what this team is. They need guys to be better at the job that they're given to do. Guard your yard. They don't have enough guys who do that consistently. And I think Charles Lee will help in that regard.
Yeah, I think that the intangibles of just having a guy who's been there before, won a championship as an assistant coach, has dealt with superstar power before with Giannis, with Chris Middleton, with those other guys in Milwaukee, good solid veterans like Bobby Portis and Wesley Matthews, and for a hot minute, Jay Crowder, just dealing with established veterans and knowing what to do and how to coach those guys. I think it's a very important aspect. So you got two guys that are now joined Missoula who know the game, okay, who have been around, who have been through championship runs, who have been on championship rosters as a player or as a coach. And I think that that's the experience that Joe needs around him. I just think it's interesting. The organization had to admit, like, okay, this has got to change. And it's great to have guys on your squad, on your coaching staff who are good guys, but it's just more than being just a good guy. It's having the experience. It's being able to have influence on the players. It's to be able to have the players not think, oh, he's cool. Like, I don't think that Tatum and Brown disliked any of the coaches or they didn't respect them. I just think that they, but they didn't go and have that conversations where it's like they know that guy has been there, or they go, no, that guy's been on a championship run, and been, in a system that has been very successful. And I'm not saying that the previous coaches had done that, but they didn't have the confidence or the influence. If you look at the guys, I think it said, Ben Sullivan's going to be a good coach. The same with Ben Miles. The same with guy got good, very close was Mike Moser. First year, kind of coming in after playing internationally, so he's a young guy, but he can have influence. But I think those guys will probably be more comfortable with someone they know in Ime Udoka in Houston and have that influence and be able to deal with a younger core, but also have Ime as the guy that, like, the players can be like, okay, he ain't playing. Where in this situation, it's going to be more of a team effort. I think people will listen to Joe, and I'm not saying I think fully respect Joe, but they'll also be able to joke and laugh around with Sam Cassell, who will keep it real with him. They can be able to ask him, hey, man, how is it like playing with Akeem? How is it like playing with Garnett? How is it like playing on those championship teams, in Houston? And that team in 08 and so, like, he's got 2 million stories. And I think that's invaluable to these young guys because they like to hear stories and they want to hear, these guys talk to them about the old days, but also, hey, how can I be better and keep it real with me? Don't, and I said, you can't be this guy's buddies and best friends all the time. You got to be their coach. And I think that in this situation, Charles Lee and Sam Cassell bring those authoritative voices. They've been there before. They've coached on championship rosters like Darvin Ham, coaching the Milwaukee championship run, went to the Lakers, very successful first season. So it's going to work out. I think this is a good positive step. Now, now you got to start thinking about the personnel moves and what you're going to do there. But I also think bolstering the coaching staff, and you got to add maybe 2 more coaches to fill out that roster. I think probably Tony Dobbins will return, and there'll be some other guys, Matt Reynolds maybe, who will come back. But you got to add another coach there too. Maybe a young rising coach, a guy coming from the G League, maybe. Who knows? It wouldn't be crazy. They'd had it with Carol Lawson to hire a good woman coach, female coach, and add to that, and add some variety and some diversity to that coaching staff. There's plenty of former WNBA players, former coaches who would love to join the Celtic staff and have a lot of influence and a lot of impact. So hopefully they'll go in that direction too.
Well, you kind of took my follow-up. I was going to ask, how would you grade the coaching staff after last week we had mentioned, both of you had mentioned that Sam Cassell was a good move, but you were not fully impressed just yet. So what would you grade
Sherrod
the
wasn't.
coaching staff now?
I
mean,
I
you weren't
like
fully
Sam.
impressed. Okay.
Sam is my friend. I like
That's
Sam.
my guy. That's his guy.
Sherrod was the one who was saying, you got to add more. That ain't enough. But go ahead, Sherrod.
Getting greedy.
Yeah. You know what, Gary? Unlike Gary, I'm actually going to stand my ground and say, yes, you absolutely had to add more than just Sam Cassell, and they've done that. That's why this is such a good hire. If you would have only had Charles Lee and no Sam Cassell, I would have said the same thing. You need to add a certain mindset. You need to have championship pedigree. You need to have guys that have a little bit of an edge to them. Now, I'm not sure where Charles Lee stands on the edge barometer, but I damn sure know Sam I am is coming in and he got something to say. Sam is one of those guys that when he was a player, whether he's an assistant coach, there was always this certain level of irrational confidence that he always had. It didn't matter what the situation was. It didn't matter who he was playing with. It didn't matter who he had to coach. Sam always had this belief that he could get the most out of either himself or the guys that he's working with, and that it was going to work out. You need that type of energy in your locker room if you're trying to win a championship, because you're going to have stretches where everything and everyone is going to tell you who you aren't, what you can't do, and what's not realistic. And you need a steady voice that even during the good times is just filling you up with confidence. And when the bad times, they haven't changed. Sam is that kind of coach. And having a guy like Charles Lee, who has a clear ability to recognize ways to defend at a high level and things of that nature, that, to me, the combination of those two is a really good 1-2 punch. And again, the one thing that you cannot underestimate is when you add people to the mix who have won at the highest level, who've been part of championship caliber wins. That experience is invaluable because it's literally the one thing that I don't care how many players you bring in, how many X's and O's that you've gone through, and how amazingly awesome you are in that regard. If you haven't been the last team standing, you don't know what it feels like to be the man. All you know is what it's like to be near the man or be a contender, be in the hunt. You don't know what it's like to be the last team standing when everything and everyone is done. And the only team that can say that we're number one is you and your crew. You bring in two guys who have done that both. With Sam, he's done it both as a player and Sam as a player, Charles as a coach. And that experience is invaluable. I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown specifically are going to benefit more than anyone else because they are the guys that if the Celtics are to take that next step, they're going to be the ones that are going to lead the charges. And having those two coaches specifically on the staff, I think brings them closer to bringing home banner 18. The bottom line in all of this is you're trying to get better. And if you're the Celtics, we've talked about ways that they can try and get better, but let's talk about ways that you at home can get better. And we're talking specifically about one of our new friends of the family, Factor Meals. It's summertime and you're looking for something wholesome for convenient meals for those sunny active days. Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fill up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, you'll eat well, and you'll stay on track for reaching whatever your goals are as far as food is concerned. Now, too busy with summer plans to cook, but you want to make sure you're eating well, Factor has got you covered. Skip the trip to the grocery store and skip the chopping and prepping and cleaning up, all that stuff, because keep it real, I don't really want to do all that stuff. I want to just get my food and get it right now. In fact, Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. So all you have to do is heat and enjoy, then get back to outside and soak up all that beautiful summer weather. Looking for calorie-conscious options this summer? Try delicious, dietitian-approved, calorie-smart meals with around or less than 550 calories per serving. And if you need an extra boost to support your wellness goals this summer, try the Protein Plus meals with 30 grams of protein or more per serving. Elevate eating at home with their new upscale surf and turf meal options like roasted garlic, filet mignon, and shrimp. And for the spicy lovers out there, they got some little Cajun spice shrimp and salmon for you as well. We offer delicious favorite pack options on the menu each week to fit a variety of lifestyles from keto to calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and Protein Plus. Prepared by chefs and approved by dietitians, each meal has all the ingredients you need to feel satisfied all day long while meeting your goals. And if you're looking to mix it up, You can add a protein to select vegan plus veggie meals each week. You choose from 34 plus chef-prepared dietitian-approved weekly options featuring premium ingredients such as broccolini, leeks, truffle butter, and asparagus. Call right now. Head to factormeals.com/ALIST50 and use code ALIST50, ALIST50 to get 50% off your first box. That's code ALIST50 at factormeals.com/ALIST50 to get 50% off your first box.
I should mention that I am on the Vineyard. If you're watching on YouTube, you're probably like, where is she? Last week, y'all were both out of Boston. So now finally I get my revenge and I'm enjoying the warmth that is the Vineyard. But Gary.
You're just bougie, Kwani. We was
Yeah,
out
you know.
bougie.
Black and bougie. I just needed to put that out there. But Gary, last time he was in Miami, obviously the season's over, the series is over. The Nuggets are the winner. We're going to actually talk about in a second the conversation that you had with Dorchester's own, but let's just recap the game, the series in general. The Nuggets, they win their first NBA title with that Game 5 win over Miami. Jokic, the finals MVP. Very, very, very well deserved. 30.2 points per game, in that game actually. In that specific game, it was 30.2 points, 14 rebounds, and 7.2 assists. Jamal Murray gets a title as well. What did you two, we all kind of predicted this, but what do you think about Denver finally winning it?
Go ahead, Gary. Show them some love.
Well, I think it was an outstanding performance by the Nuggets. Basically, they outplayed Miami besides one quarter of the series in game 2, but the other 4 games. And Miami played well. You know, they were not going to go out without a fight. They played hard, but their problem was offense. You know, they just couldn't score enough. 89 points last night. I think they only scored over 100 once in the series. It's not acceptable. And I know for Celtic fans, it's frustrating because if you look at the numbers from Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, and our friend Caleb Martin, they were not good in the series. They were not good in the series. People can come up with certain reasons as to why. What did the Nuggets do differently? Did they just play better? I think that they did play better defense than the Celtics. And in the series, they ran out the shooters. They were aggressive. They learned. They didn't handle the zone great all the time, but they handled the zone good enough. And they were able to come out with some good defense and also, some timely offense. And that's the thing. Jokic is a great player. I think the world can see now that he's the best player in the league. He just has that, 30, like you said, Kwani, 30 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists in the series. Jamal Murray, 21 and 10 assists. Aaron Gordon had a solid series, shooting 60% from the field, 14 points. Bruce Brown, Dorchester's own. Michael Porter Jr. was not good in the series at all, but he had his moments in Game 5. And if you look at the Miami Heat, not a good series from Jimmy Butler, 41% from the field. Gabe Vincent, 33% from the three-point line. Caleb Martin, 33% from the three-point line, 7 points. I mean, it's a crazy, the numbers. I mean, if you look at the numbers, if I do my hood math here, Vincent.
We love Hood University math.
Yes. Vincent, Martin, and Strus were combined. They hit 21 3-pointers in the series combined. I think they hit 50 against the Celtics in the 7-game series. So they were 21 for, let me see here, 30, 45.
Carry the 2, then a 1.
Carry the 4 and then divide by 7. And of course, you get.
They were 21 for 77 from the 3-point line in the series. 21 for 77 from the 3-point line in the series. So, I mean, Celtic fans, I'm sure they're frustrated because they they leveled out. 27%.
They shouldn't be though, because then they would have got demolished by Denver as well.
Yeah, some people. I think they would have provided a better series because they had more offensive weapons. But I just think Denver was a team that was locked in. It was a very, very
Dominant.
very deep team. They played strong defense. And as I said, I think the Celtics just, you know what? Like, they dropped the ball. They should have been in the finals. People were telling me that, throughout the series, that they were, the Celtics botched the whole thing, and it had been a good series. Now with the Celtics, well, I don't know, they might have lost in 6, but I just think you saw one matter of luck, unfortunate in terms of just like the Miami hit a lot of big shots in that series. I watched Caleb Martin throughout this series against Denver with open shots, and I was like, oh, he gonna hit that. He hit that against Boston, clank. Like, he just wasn't himself. He didn't get a lot of shot attempts. But the defense and the Nuggets adjusted. They watched the Celtics series, right? One, run these dudes off the line. Make them shoot contested 2s. Don't leave them open for 3. 2, you're going to have to let somebody go off, and it was Adebayo. But Adebayo ain't hitting no 3s. So let him go crazy with the 2s. 2, as I was told by the Nuggets, what they said, don't go for Jimmy Butler's pump fakes. The Celtics did that. And don't put too much attention on him, as the Celtics did, and leave open shooters because he'll find them. So I just think those recipes to success were the reason that Denver was able to really dominate the series. And I think that they're a complete club. Jokic, I think people don't respect him, haven't respected him because he doesn't have crazy athleticism like Giannis, and he doesn't talk a lot like Embiid, but the dude is just a masterful player, and it's ugly. He scored some of the ugliest baskets and just flipped it up there, but it gets in, it gets done. So I think for a franchise like the Nuggets, 47 years without a title since joining the NBA in 1976, they, it's long overdue. And I think, too, patience, like Mike Malone did not go to the playoffs his first 3 seasons as coach. Remember, without Jamal Murray, who was hurt last year, they lost in the first round last year to Golden State. Like, it was people were like, that's when people were like, wait a minute, Jokic is, it's a fraud. Like, you don't get no team wins. But when you stick with the process, you stick with the plan, and I think that might be a kind of a nod to the Celtics. Hey, boss, it's not easy to build a championship team. And just keep knocking on the door, and it'll go in. Now, do I think the Celtics next year should be their year? Yeah, like
absolutely.
Next year is no more playing games. Fix whatever you need to fix and make a championship run. And you can look to the Nuggets, because the Nuggets have been a team that has kind of knocked on the door for years. Western Conference Finals in the bubble. They lost to the Lakers. Conference semis. They've been there, but never been able to get over the top. But this was their year. Remember, when they entered the playoffs, some people thought Minnesota was going to give them a real tough series. They won in 5. Then most people predicted that Phoenix was going to get them. They won that in 6. And then some people predicted the Lakers were going to get them, and they swept the Lakers. They were 16-4 in the playoffs. So outstanding job. And I just think it shows the things the Celtics did not do. They did not learn their lesson. And it was more than just luck that Strus, Vincent, and Martin weren't good. It was defense. It was attention. And maybe that, who knew? I don't think anyone knew Caleb Martin would be such a difference maker in the Eastern Conference Finals. But they gave too many open shots. They put too much attention on Jimmy. And I think Denver was right away, was like, okay, we got to give something up. It's going to be Adebayo, okay? And someone else is going to have to beat us besides. It's not going to be these guys just shooting open 3s. So they didn't. They missed. And, it's frustrating for Celtic Nation, but Denver deserved it.
Yeah, Denver definitely deserved it. But when I look at Miami's run, it was a fairy tale run for so much of the postseason. But let's be honest. At some point, the clock was going to strike midnight, and Miami Heat were going to be exactly who we thought they were. And we saw that against Denver. And all it took to unlock them getting back to being who they were was to force them to make tough plays. force them to shoot with hands in their face, force them to defend, not just on perimeter, but defend guys who are cutting to the basket, who you know are ready to catch and finish at the rim. Force them to become uncomfortable because the Celtics did everything but that. And that, to me, was Miami's demise. They weren't prepared to play a team like Denver because they, frankly, so much of what they did against the Celtics, they weren't going to see that type of comfort from the Denver Nuggets. So they were ill-equipped to deal with the force that Denver came with. Flip side, Denver, they played like a team that had everything. They played every game like it was Game 7. They played with the sense of urgency that when you get to this stage, should be a given. But as we've seen with the Celtics, it's not a given. Denver is the blueprint from an edge, from an approach standpoint, that if you're the Celtics, you want to mimic. You want to play with that sense of urgency from the opening of tip of Game 1 to the final horn sounding in Games 5, 6, or 7. Now, the one thing about Denver that you cannot replicate, no matter, at least not now, you don't have the kind of dogs on your roster that Denver does. Jokic is a dog. Bruce Brown is a dog. KCP is a dog. You start going down their roster, and they got nothing but just aggressive, angry, playing with a chip on their shoulder fellas from top to bottom. And the Celtics, you got Marcus Smart. That's it. That's why if you can't replicate the players, you got to replicate the attitude of the players. And that's why coaching is the clearest path for this Celtics team to have that type of edge that we didn't see this year. Because you're not going to get 4 or 5 dogs in here who are talented. Just like that, it's not going to work. So what's the next best thing? Having guys who can instill that aggressive, antagonistic, dog-like mindset in your players, on your coaching staff. Watching Denver, the way they just handle their business, is an absolute clear as day referendum on this is what championship basketball looks like. You have to have talent, you have to have an edge, and you have to have a certain consistency and a coach who is able to pivot to whatever is beneficial to your team in that moment and not need a time delayed game 1 or 2 loss before you figure that out. One of the things, and it's not going to get enough attention because of just how things played out, but the way Denver began to adapt to that zone defense, where they were getting the balls to Jokic at the free throw line or at the elbow, and then letting him go to work. Shoot the short jump shot. If they play that, if they sag you, that's the shot you take. If they collapse on him near that elbow, you've got so many guys cutting, there's going to be a layup. And if they take away the cutter, and if they do a good job defensively on you, you're going to have 1 or 2 guys open in the corner for a corner 3. And they started to just chip away at that Miami zone with that going on. Oh, Miami zone too long because they realized they figured it out.
So yeah, I mean, I think the Celtics have to take the next steps, and I think what I was saying was general manager Calvin Booth, like he loaded the roster with talent, and some of those guys didn't play. You know, they had a lot of guys who, like DeAndre Jordan and Ish Smith, and guys that were, quite honestly, who probably could have played at other NBA teams, gotten some minutes, but, you know, not everybody can play, but you load your roster with talent, and you have, and, you know, they drafted well. Christian Brown, the kid from Kansas, who was a wonderful player off the bench for them. You know, like that, you gotta hit on some of these guys, right? You gotta, you know, you can't, you know, you gotta do what's right. You got to do it right sometimes. Reggie Jackson didn't play, and he was on that roster. Like, you loaded the players with talent, and you know, got a good rotation. That team, you could just see the chemistry. Those guys like each other. They like playing together. And the one thing that I'll just say, all of them had a role. And the Celtics have to do a better job of defining roles. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, you know, like it was just too much. Some of these guys didn't, you know, Marcus Smart trying to do one thing, Tatum trying to do another, Jalen trying to take over. Like, everybody knows their role. And the one thing that I just noticed from Denver was, you know, we could be a mess offensively, but damn it, we're not going to let that affect our defense. Because that was the case They were not good in Game 5 offensively. They weren't. But they held Miami down, held them to, I think, 30% shooting in the second half, and basically grinded out a win. And I think those are the games that the Celtics have to, those are the type of games Celtics have to win sometimes. You're not going to win 120 to 110 or 120 to 105. Like, everything ain't going to be pretty. You got to grind some games out. 94-89. That was because I don't, like to say, well, the Celtics should have swept Miami. No, Miami too good for that. They should have won that series in 6. And, you grind out games like Game 2 in the series where they fell apart and the whole Grant Williams, Jimmy Butler thing. That's a game you grind out and you win. Like, you got to win those types of games. The Celtics are good at pulling away and blowing teams out. They led the league in point differential. It's when the games get close and tight and they've got to execute. And Denver was able to execute down the stretch, and not necessarily great all the time, but just even them up, hold off Miami, get that one key rebound, that one key play, because Jimmy Butler almost single-handedly brought them back in the fourth quarter, but the Nuggets matched bucket for bucket, then played enough good defense to force a turnover and make those winning plays. So the Celtics have a lot to work on. They have the talent, they have the blueprint, but now it's time to carry it out.
Well, the NBA season may be over, but the action never ends on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. We talk about FanDuel every week on this podcast, one of our great partners, because one, they have really good promotions on a daily basis right in the app. It's a safe and secure app, which makes it more comforting to know that you're using something that's secure. But finally, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to place bets with all the playoff action. That's America's #1 sportsbook. You can visit FanDuel.com/Boston. And again, get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. These are our hiring goals, they say. They're very aggressive, but when everyone looks to you, you're calm. Why? Because you don't need a miracle, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring platform that can help you do it all. They streamline hiring with powerful tools that can help you find your matched candidates. And with Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Candidates you invite to apply on that app are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than the candidates who only see it in the search. Also, you get one step closer to the hire by immediately matching with keyword quality candidates who fit that job. Even better, Indeed's the only job site where you can only pay for the applications that are what you actually want to have, the must-have requirements. And Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring tool, delivering 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined. You can start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/A-list. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. So once again, claim that $75 credit right now on Indeed.com/A-list. Indeed.com/A-list. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire, you need Indeed. Continuing that conversation that we had about what Miami had to deal with the Nuggets, what do you two make of the Denver Nuggets? What couldn't the Celtics learn? Hopefully, they were at least tuning into some of the games. What do you think the Celtics learned from that potential dynasty? That's still to be determined.
Well, I think Denver, you can talk about them winning or being a dynasty because one, they just won a championship, but two, you look at their core group and there's no one up over 30 in their core. So they still have guys that are, either at their peak or pretty damn close to being at their peak and are going to be there for at least another 2 or 3 years. So the potential is absolutely there. If you're the Celtics, I think you have to understand and embrace the fact that you need to maximize moments of greatness, moments where you can be the absolute best in the world. And they failed to do that. They failed to do that last year when they were up in Golden State series in the finals. They failed to do that in the conference finals where they spotted Miami a 3-zip series lead and damn near got all that back. I would say if it wasn't for a Jason Tatum ankle injury, they probably would have pulled off the miracle comeback and advanced to the finals. They don't do a good enough job of having the sense of urgency you need to at this point. You are a team that's built to win a championship. Their talent alone is not going to get it done. You look around the NBA, as talented as the Celtics are, there are at least 2, 3, 4 teams that, from a talent standpoint, top to bottom, are right there with them. The difference, effort, energy, sense of urgency. And they don't play with enough of that. And when you look at Denver, the one thing when I watched them play, the thing that jumped out to me more than anything else was Denver didn't have that many what I call empty defensive possessions, meaning guys were getting wide open shots. Miami didn't get a lot of wide open shots in this series. And when they were close, they fought under screens. They fought over screens. They banged around the basket. Denver did everything you're supposed to do to claw, scratch, fight, bite your way to a title. And the Celtics, it seems like they don't want to get dirty like that. You want to win a championship? It needs to get messy. It needs to be ugly at times. I mean, hell, as we pointed out, Game 5 was 94-89. That is not what you want to see in the final, championship caliber game. But that's what Denver needed to do to get the win, and they were willing to make the sacrifice to do that. Will the Celtics at some point get to the postseason and play with that sense of urgency and make those sacrifices with some consistency? We're waiting to see if that'll ever happen.
Yeah, well, I think the Celtics have to play the season with a level of force, anger, and just play mad. Like, I know it's one game at a time and we got another one tomorrow and you can't take every game. Like, they got to go through and get that number 1 seed, iron out all the issues. You can't, the one thing that happened with this team was all the issues that they went through lingered throughout the season and burning the playoffs. The lack of defense at times, lackadaisical play, relying too much on three-pointers. All these things were things that we saw all during the regular season. Big blown leads. We saw that all during the regular season, and they were never addressed and never improved. And the Celtics they were good enough to get away with those mistakes. And let's be honest, this team won 57 games. If they played sharp basketball more, they could have won probably 67 games. There's easily 10 games you could point to throughout the season that they lost that they probably could have won or should have won. So I'm not saying this team should have won 67 games. You're going to have games that you blow. You're going to have leads that are blown. You're going to have times where you just don't have it. But I think the Celtics have to play with force throughout the season. And Denver won less games. Denver won 53 games during the season. But Denver locked it in during the playoffs. They didn't mess with their food. Minnesota in 5, Phoenix in 6, and then blowout win in a closeout game on the road. And then the Lakers, they could have messed around with the Lakers. They took the first 3. The Lakers gave them their best shot in Game 4. Nuggets fought and got that one too. And then they come into the series really, with a long rest, fresh, ready to go, and they took out the Heat in 5. So they didn't play with their food. The Celtics is all up here too with the Celtics. Focus, not playing lackadaisically, playing hard on defense all the time. Don't let your offense affect your defense. All those things they can learn from the Nuggets. Nuggets weren't a perfect team, and it probably would have been a very competitive series if the Celtics had played them. But I can't guarantee you the Celtics would have the same focus as the Nuggets did. I don't know. Because the Celtics basically lost the first. They thought in Game 1 against Miami, they were up, I think, 12 in the first half. They thought, okay, we figured these guys out. This is not And then that 46-point third quarter changed the entire series. Miami, then they ended up losing the game. Game 2, the Jimmy Butler situation, and then game 3, they gave up. So it's just like you gave away 3 games in that series, and one of them because you just didn't show up. And so to me, it's all up here: mental fortitude, toughness, getting the dogs in there, playing who's going to go out there and play hard. If a guy's not playing hard, or hey, pull him. Like you see it happen in baseball. Guy don't run hard down the first baseline. Guy's lackadaisical. Guy gets beat, not getting back because he's complaining about calls. Nope. Like, that's unacceptable. We can't have this because next year is the year. Like, Milwaukee's going to be back. All these teams now are coming back from the dead. Philadelphia, all these teams that the Celtics had put down or were gone are back. So the Celtics are going to have to realize that it's going to take more than what they provided last year. It's going to take more. Everybody, Jason, Jalen, like more focus, fortitude, not playing with your food. Oh, this team doesn't have this player. Oklahoma City's not playing with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Okay, let's lose by 33 to that was embarrassing. Like it's one thing to lose. It's one thing to lose to a team. How many times they lose to teams without their star player, one of their top players? Game 5 against the Hawks with no DeJounte Murray, and Horford admitted maybe we kind of took the foot off the gas. Or same thing with Joel Embiid in Game 1 against the Sixers. That can't happen anymore. Like, that's got to end, and it's on the players too. It can't always be on Joe. This is prior to Joe. So that's the thing: the mental focus and mentally locked in. How bad do you really want it? That's what the question the Celtics have to ask themselves.
Well, another connection to the Boston area via the NBA Finals were 3 players that are now NBA champions as a result. The first one, Jeff Green, the Celtics, they drafted him in 2007. He was their 5th overall pick. Ended up going to the Supersonics, which obviously is the Thunder right now. The second person that's connected, my own fellow alumni, Reggie Jackson, Boston College alum. But finally, most importantly, I think at this point is Bruce Brown, who's from Dorchester, Boston's own. And Gary Washburn, you actually had a chance to talk to him after the game. What did you two talk about?
Yeah, very excited. Obviously, he's a guy who, from Dorchester, played at Wakefield High School, then transferred to Vermont Academy. Because as you guys know, if you're a D1 prospect in Boston, generally you got to go to prep school. Like, it's just the way it is. It's I think Shabazz Napier might be one of the only few players that come out of a Boston City high school and go and have be a top D1 player. Most of the players transfer, and so he went to Vermont Academy and then played 2 years at the University of Miami. Came out, was a 2nd-round pick, and went to Detroit. Found his footing there. He credited Dwayne Casey. Yeah, Sherrod, Detroit. Credited Dwayne Casey for discovering him and giving him an opportunity to play. Then he went to Brooklyn. And he thought that this summer, and everybody thought after his good series against the Celtics that he was going to get really, really paid. And it didn't happen. He got the 2-year, $13 million deal with the Nuggets with a player option for this summer. I think he'll decline and go out on the
market. As he should.
So who knows where he'll be, but he'll be a free agent. But just a guy who's got a good story and said, hey, I'm going to try to bring the Larry O'Brien Trophy back to Dorchester, show the kids what happens, because he was a kid in Dorchester too, right there, playing in the Boston public leagues in terms of the AAU circuit and the summer leagues and that type of thing. He's a Boston kid, and I think that Boston's a place that has good basketball players, from Wayne Turner, Wayne Selden, Ron Lee, but wants to get more respect for the ballers that it produces. And so I think this is a source of pride for Boston, especially Dorchester area, Roxbury, that area of players. And unfortunately, you'd like to see these kids be able to flourish at Boston City schools or whatever. Unfortunately, instead of having to go to prep school, but that's just the way it is, obviously, in this system. But it was good. It was good to talk to Bruce and just to see how proud he's still a very proud Bostonian, very proud kid from his hometown. And so it was good to see that he was able to be successful and be a good part, a productive part of a championship team.
He's such a dog, and I love that about him. I love Bruce is my favorite player in the NBA right now. He is my favorite player because and I will be rocking a Bruce Brown jersey very soon. It's literally on its way. So
that's a Boston. I feel like if there's anyone, obviously Boston always reps people that are from there. So I feel like that jersey would be respected around the area, even though it's obviously not a Celtics one.
He's just so tough mentally. I mean, watching him play, I mean, he's on the floor. He's like, what, 4th, 5th option offensively, and yet he's taking big shots. He's grabbing offensive rebounds. He's cutting to the basket, drawing contact, doing and he's defending his ass off. Jimmy Butler wasn't struggling just because he was having a bad ankle or having a bad night. Bruce Brown kind of had something to do with that. Bruce was him and KCP, I thought, did a great job of making things difficult. And when you look at Bruce's, position, he's a point guard, shooting guard, sometimes small forward, sometimes power forward, and will occasionally guard a center. He's basically just a army Swiss knife who carves up anyone and everyone he's got to deal with. And he's taking no prisoners. He plays with a nasty, I don't like you. Every second I'm on the floor, I will not like you. And I'm going to show you how much I dislike you. I love that about him. Love that about Bruce. That's my guy. I love Bruce Brown.
It's not often we talk about this, but because there's so much pride, like you said, Gary, like Dorchester, people that I've met from Dorchester, Mattapan, Roxbury, like they rep their neighborhood. They are very proud. So, like, hypothetical world, what do you think Bruce Brown could bring to the Celtics?
Oh my God. See, I'm the worst
Let's play fantasy land real quick
right now because to me, he brings everything. He gives you everything that you wish you had that you don't right now. He's tough. He's not afraid to take big shots. He's come through in late game situations. He doesn't mind not being on the floor in those moments. If that's what you as a coach feels best, he is more than ready to take the big shot, big play, get the big defensive stop. And he's just ready for the moment. The moment is never going to be bigger than Bruce Brown. And there's not a lot of role players in the NBA who you feel comfortable and confident in saying that about. Because role players, there's usually some nerves and jitters. Bruce ain't got that. He ain't built like that. He's just not. So he'd mean everything, Kwani. Everything.
Everything. Gary, what do you think?
Everything.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they could use another good defensive player, combo guard. Now they'd have to make some moves, but just something they could look into. I think he would be a good Celtic. I think he'd be proud to come home, play in front of his family and friends. And he's a guy who's fearless, and I think that's what the Celtics need. And it might not be Bruce Brown, but they need more fearless guys, more guys that play with a chip on their shoulder, that play like their life depended on it, like it's their last game. And I think that's what he brings to the table. And I think that's rare around the NBA, not only with the Celtics, as these guys who play with their hearts, leading with their hearts. And I think that's an important thing. And so it was good for him to see, to not only sign with Denver, but etch out an established role and be a key part of that team, and I think that's the thing. And you could tell that team is close, They're close. Those guys like each other. They've all been through a lot. Brown's been with 2 other franchises. Aaron Gordon was a guy who was supposed to be a kind of a superstar in Orlando, and it didn't work. And he's etched a role there in Denver that's not a superstar role, but a really workmanlike role. And he's turned himself into a very good player, a good, guy who could rebound, hit post up, physical, all that, in addition to being a real great athlete. Contavious Caldwell-Pope coming from the Lakers, a good defender. They put together guys who have been other places that were like, why can't we make this work here? And I think that that's what is very important, and the Celtics could take away from that. So I think, hypothetically, Bruce Brown would be a great addition to a lot of teams, including the Celtics. But I think he's going to have his pick. He's going to have his pick of the litter, because I think he really helped himself during the playoffs.
Well, there we go. I think if you have any final words, I do have to point out something you said, that Denver team clearly likes each other a lot, but Jokic is ready to go back to Serbia and celebrate. Yeah. He's that coworker that just goes to work and goes home. He was happy to win, but it's funny.
He ain't for that happy hour life.
He's not trying to go to y'all cookout after work. No. Like, he wants to go home to his family.
Reports. He got the best report of everybody who filed reports in your office.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
He get that
you know there's no mistakes. Like, you don't even have to check it twice. No, shout out to him again for being the Finals MVP. Well deserved. That was a great series to watch, and seeing how Denver has kind of elevated their city as a result. But that's a wrap, I think, for this week's episode of the A-List podcast. Of course, Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn. Special thanks to our sponsors. Make sure you use the specific URLs and promo codes if you decide to join any of our favorite sponsors here on the A-List podcast. Of course, that is Indeed.com, Factor Meals, and FanDuel. But for Sherrod Blakely and Gary Washburn, I'm Kwani Lunis, live from the Vineyard. We'll be back next week. Hopefully there'll be some news to talk about. There's always NBA news. Yeah, but I'm going to stay bougie until then. Have a good week.
So bougie.